This video will show you how to replace the coolant reservoir on a Cadillac CTS. This will be located along the driver's side of your engine compartment. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Locate your coolant reservoir on the driver's side of the engine compartment. We're going to open our coolant reservoir cover. One thing that's good to note is that you never want to open this if it's hot. It could be under pressure. Ours is cool to the touch. I'm going to carefully open this. I'm pressing down. I'm turning it counterclockwise and lifting up and away from my face. Just a quick inspection of that cap. We'll set it aside. Now that we have the cap off of there, the next thing we have to do is remove as much coolant from inside of the reservoir as possible. Now, depending on the condition of your coolant, you may want to replace all of the coolant, or you might just want to remove as much coolant from inside of the reservoir as possible and continue on from there. If you're just replacing the reservoir, you can typically just remove the coolant from inside of it using a small fluid extractor, which is what I'll be using. Of course, I'll be collecting and recycling all that coolant properly. Just make my way down in here. Once you've removed as much coolant as possible from inside of this area, we can continue on. To remove this entire reservoir, you're going to find that you have a couple hoses that have to be dislodged and some hardware. But you're also going to find that there's minimal area to be able to even remove this. To easily gain access, we're going to dislodge the brake master cylinder from the brake booster located behind it. So I'm going to start with this piece of hardware closest to the engine first. It's the one that's out in the open. We're using a 15 millimeter for each one of these mounting nuts. There's one on each side of the master cylinder. Just using a swivel and an extension. Okay. This stud looks good. Let's go over to the other side of the master cylinder and repeat that exact same process. Now that next piece of hardware is down in between this area. We can see it between the master cylinder and our coolant reservoir. Still using the same tools. So now I have a strap available. I have it going to the other side of the vehicle, and this is going to hold the master cylinder for me. I'm taking hold of the master cylinder. I'm going to carefully pull it away from the brake booster, bringing it forward just enough that I can remove it from the two studs, and then I'm going to pull it towards the passenger side of the vehicle or towards the engine. Slide it over here. That gives us plenty of room. Now we'll just go ahead and strap this down like I mentioned. That'll prevent it from falling. Now we can continue on with the two hoses that we're going to be dislodging from the coolant reservoir. We're starting along the top. For each of the hoses, they're typically going to have a squeezable clamp. You'd want to squeeze that, slide the hose out of place, and give it a thorough inspection. Starting at the top here, I'm just going to use some long nose pliers. We'll slide that down just far enough we can remove the hose from the area. Now to remove the hose, typically it might be stuck in place. If that's the case, you'd want to give it a little twist and then carefully pull it out and away. Just be careful not to cause any damage to the hose, otherwise you're going to have to replace it. Now we can move to our next coolant hose. Down at the bottom here, the process for this will be the exact same thing. Now this one's a little bit larger. Something else that you want to note is there could still be coolant inside of the reservoir and more than likely coolant inside of this coolant hose. So of course we have a collection receptacle underneath this area. We're going to collect and recycle all fluid properly. Let's start by squeezing the clamp and we'll slide this out of position. Now this hose is stuck in position, so I'm going to be using a small angled pick. I want to try to get underneath the hose, in between the reservoir and the hose, being extremely careful not to cause any damage to that hose. Unless, of course, you intend on replacing that as well. We are. A little bit of coolant coming out. We'll just divert that into our coolant receptacle. Now that I have that dislodged, I'm just going to set it up nice and high so coolant stops making its way out. Now to continue removing this reservoir, you're going to find that you have three 10 millimeter headed pieces of hardware. You have two 10 millimeter bolts. You have one here, one down at the bottom, which is going to be the hardest one to gain access to. Then you also have one 10mm mounting nut up in this area. I'm going to save this bolt for last. Let's start with the other two. So in this area we have our 10mm mounting nut. And now our next piece of hardware we're going for is deep down in this area. So I'm using my 10mm for this. I'm just using a swivel socket and a long extension so I can gain access. There's that one. It's time for the last mounting bolt right out in the open here. This one's the easiest to gain access to. Now we have the hardware out of there, but we cannot fully remove this yet. What you're going to find is that this ear up in this area that we had removed our mounting nut from, there's a small stud. The stud goes through our reservoir. It also goes through this wiper cowl. The wiper cowl is holding this in place, so we have to dislodge the wiper cowl from this area. Now to start dislodging this wiper cowl, you're going to find that we have a rubber weather seal making its way across. Just go ahead and slide the entire thing right out of the way. It slides off. Now as you can tell, we can move around the wiper cowl, but we do still need to be able to slide it in this direction. Some good news is we do not have to dislodge the driver's side wiper arm from the area because there is a slidable port in the plastic wiper cowl. But what we do have to do is remove the passenger side wiper arm from the area. So with that said, we're going to make a clear marking where the wiper blade and wiper arm are on the windshield so we know exactly where this needs to sit during the installation process. Let's do that next. I'll be using some masking tape for this. Put it right up along the top of the blade. Doesn't have to be perfect. We do just want to have a clear marking where we're going to be located during the installation process, just as I mentioned. Now let's start removing that wiper arm. Now on the wiper arm, you're typically going to find that you have some sort of protective cover. Underneath this, we should find that we have some mounting hardware that has to be removed. Of course, a quick inspection of our cover, we will be reusing this. We're using a 15mm for our mounting nut. Let's take hold of the wiper arm. We're going to give it a wiggle. We need to break it free from the wiper regulator underneath it. Typically the wiper regulator is splined and this is pressed down onto it. You can use some penetrant as necessary. Now I have some penetrant on the area. We're going to take hold of the wiper arm. We're going to attempt to wiggle it around. We want to break it free from the wiper regulator underneath it. If you find that it's still bound in place and it does not want to easily get removed, you can carefully tap on this area. Just be extremely careful. You do have your windshield glass directly behind it. Just a couple light taps there. You can also use a specialty tool. Not everybody has one of those. Now at this point, we're going to flex this. Keep in mind it is under spring tension along this joint area. Be careful for any pinch points. Don't get hurt. Press it down, lift this up. Let's go ahead and remove that. We'll set it aside. Along the passenger side wiper cowl, you're going to find that there's 4 mounting bolts holding it down. We have to remove this side of the wiper cowl so we can eventually dislodge the other side. Let's remove all 4 of these mounting bolts. So now as far as both sides of this wiper cowl, you're going to find along where your windshield glass is, the cowl actually sandwiches the glass in between the lower portion and the upper portion. So what we'll have to do is carefully start lifting up and then we'll start pulling it away from the windshield. Once we have this shifted enough that we can start dislodging the other one, we'll continue on over there. Over on the other side, we need to make sure we lift this up high enough that it pulls away from this area. Obviously, we also have to dislodge it from along the window glass. We're going to slide it towards the passenger side. Over on the other side, we need to make sure we lift this up high enough that it pulls away from this area. Obviously, we also have to dislodge it from along the window glass. We're going to slide it towards the passenger side so we can remove that coolant reservoir. Now that we have the wiper cowl dislodged far enough, we should be able to remove our coolant reservoir. Let's slide it out and away from the stud, and we can remove it from the vehicle. Now that we have that lifted up and out, we can go ahead and remove our level sensor wire connector. Down along the bottom of this, we can see where that connector is. It has a locking tab. Take hold of that, and we'll slide it out of place. Now it's time for installation of the brand new coolant reservoir. We're going to start with our level sensor down along the bottom, so we'll pivot this so we can gain access to the connector portion. Align the electrical connector. We have the locking tab in the proper placement, press it in. After an audible click, we'll give it a tug, make sure it's secured in place. Now let's continue on with the installation of the coolant reservoir. We're going to bring it into place. We'll just pivot things as necessary. We'll have to maneuver things around. We want to make sure that the reservoir aligns with our stud behind here, and then of course the wiper cowl would go over it. There we are. Now, before we continue on with the hardware, holding the coolant reservoir in place, we want to make sure that we have both of our wiper cowls in the proper placement as well. So let's continue on along that area. Once we have the wiper arm and everything back in the proper placement, we'll make our way back over here for our mounting hardware. Now, as far as the wiper cowl, there's a couple things that we need to think about. As you remember, during the removal process, we had to lift this up and above the stud here. We also had to pull the wiper cowl away from our windshield. The wiper cowl has an upper area and a lower area, and the glass slides in between. Let's start getting this in position here. I can see my stud. We're aligning it, and we're pressing it rearward towards the windshield. There we are. That should slide in. Just double check to make sure it looks as though it's seated all the way across the windshield on this side. This does look good, so I'm going over to the other side wiper cowl next. This aligned here. Now, as you remember, we had 4 7mm headed mounting bolts making their way down the line. Let's start them all in, and then we'll tighten them all. Let's snug them up. Double check, make sure that's in the proper placement and secured, and we'll continue on with the installation of our passenger side wiper arm. As we bring the wiper arm and wiper blade into position, we did make a clear marking on our windshield. That's exactly where the wiper blade needs to be prior to installing and tightening the hardware, holding it down in the proper position. Here's where I'll make my adjustment. Clearly, I don't want to be up like this. I need to be right at that tape line that I had made. Okay, that's bottomed out. Let's go a little further here. Take hold of the arm, give it a wiggle, make sure it's secure. Continue on with your protective cover. We can remove the tape from the area. We have our rubber seal making its way across this entire area. We'll start from one side towards the other. Now looking at the rubber seal, you can see that it does have a groove for the plastic cowl to slide into. We'll line it up, start pressing it up against this area. Make your way all the way across. Double check, make sure that's properly secure. Now it's time for hardware for that reservoir. We'll start with our mounting nut. It's going right in this area, holding the wiper cowl and our coolant reservoir in place. Now we have our upper mounting bolt. We'll leave both of these areas loose. Let's make our way down to the bottom next. Now the reason why we left everything loose is so we can move it around as necessary here. It can be fairly difficult to get the bolt started in. There we go. While I'm down in this area, I'm going to tighten this bolt first, and I'll make my way up to the next two. Now, while I hold onto this, I'm pulling it towards my fender. We'll tighten our mounting bolt. There's that one. Now we have a mounting nut up in this corner. That's tight, and it's secure. Now it's time for some coolant hoses. We're starting with the larger hose down along the bottom. Let's get that in position. Slide it onto the coolant reservoir as far as possible. As far as the installation of the clamp, you need to make sure it's in the same placement as where you had removed it, and you need to make sure you can see hose on both sides of the clamp. That part's extremely important. Okay, I'm trying to align it. A close look. As I mentioned, we need to see hose on both sides of that clamp. Take hold of the hose, attempt to remove it from the reservoir. That doesn't slide out of place. I'm going to continue on to my next hose. As far as this hose, we're just going to slide it onto the top of the reservoir. Just as before, press it on as far as possible. Let's get the clamp in position. Make sure you can see hose on both sides of the clamp. Now let's just make sure it's secure. Nice. So we can get the strap off of here now. It's time to reattach the master cylinder. As we bring the master cylinder in place, you can see the two mounting studs that it needs to mount up to. As we bring it in, we have the center plunger area that's going to press up against the center of our master cylinder. Let's bring this into place. Now we can continue on to both of our mounting nuts. As far as installing the two pieces of 15mm hardware, we're going to start each of them on. We'll tighten them up and then torque them to 18 foot-pounds. I've got my other one here. All right, they're both started on. Let's go ahead and snug them up and torque them to that 18 foot-pounds as I mentioned. This next one in here. Let's take hold of that master cylinder, confirm it does not move around in any way in comparison to that brake booster. Now we can prepare to fill our coolant reservoir. Let's remove the coolant cap. When we go to fill the reservoir, looking along the inboard side close to the master cylinder, you're going to find that it has a line. We're filling the coolant up to that line with the manufacturer's specified coolant. You can also use universal coolant if necessary. I like to use a funnel for this. All right, this looks good. Let's remove our funnel, reinstall our coolant cap. Make sure that's nice and tight. Okay, friend, we finished the installation of our coolant reservoir. The next thing we want to do is make sure you clean down any mess in this area, removing any coolant residue. After that, you're going to start the vehicle and let it run. Confirm you have no leaks from your cooling system. Close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.